Welcome to the Quiet Hours. You can get new episodes a week early and ad-free by becoming a subscriber. Just follow the links in the episode description. Before we begin, take a moment to settle wherever you are. If you're lying down, let your shoulders rest against the bed and feel the weight of the blanket around you. If you're sitting, let your spine soften and your hands rest easily in your lap. Close your eyes if that feels comfortable and bring your attention to your breathing. No need to change it, just notice it, the quiet rhythm of air moving in and out. Each breath a little slower, a little deeper than the last. Imagine you're standing in a wide open field just before sunrise. The air is cool, still, carrying the faint scent of grass and morning dew. A thin mist lies across the ground, and the first light is only beginning to brush the horizon. Somewhere nearby, you hear the soft hiss of a flame, the steady breath of a hot air balloon as it fills with warmth. Each pulse of the burner rises like a heartbeat, calm and reassuring. The colors of the balloon glow faintly in the dim light, gold, crimson, soft amber, swaying gently as it wakes. Let your breathing soften once more. With every exhale, the body grows heavier, more relaxed. Your mind can wander if it wants to. It's safe to drift. And when you're ready, when you've settled into that easy calm, the story will begin. It's called Trust the Wind. It's a quiet story. One about air and light, about endings that feel like beginnings, and about how the sky can sometimes remind us to let go gently. So take one last deep breath in and exhale slowly. Let the sound of the morning fill your imagination. And now we'll begin. The field had a way of holding silence before sunrise, not the heavy kind, but the soft sort that hummed gently beneath everything. The air was cool and the grass, still wet with dew, brushed against Lydia's boots as she crossed to where the balloon lay sleeping. She liked this part of the morning best, when the world still felt half asleep and the sky was beginning to pale at the edges. She could smell the faint sweetness of cut hay from the far side of the valley and the quiet murmur of the river winding through the mist below. The balloon's fabric, crimson and gold, faded slightly by summers of flight, was spread wide across the ground. It looked, she always thought, like a great sleeping creature waiting for breath. She ran her hand along the nylon panels, checking for snags as she went. Her hands knew the motion without needing thought. After 23 years, her routine had become a kind of gentle ritual. The basket checked, the ropes coiled, the burners tested. It was the last day of the season. One more flight. After that, she'd fold the balloon away and let the field rest through autumn. The thought brought a flicker of something she couldn't quite name. Part relief, part ache. She straightened, breathing in the sharp morning air. A thin layer of mist hovered just above the ground, softening everything it touched. Above it, the first streaks of gold were beginning to show in the east. A pair of swallows darted low, their wings catching the light. Lydia smiled faintly. Right on time, she murmured. Her assistant, Dan, arrived a few minutes later, his scarf already damp from the mist. "Morning," he said, voice still thick with sleep. "Morning," Lydia replied. "How's the wind?" "Light, steady, from the southwest," he said, glancing at the small weather vane fixed to the truck. "Perfect for a drift over the ridge." She nodded. "Good. We'll keep it gentle today." Dan smiled. "A last flight kind of gentle?" She shrugged lightly. "Something like that." They worked quietly for a while, unrolling the last of the ropes, checking the tanks, spreading the envelope wide. The hiss of the burner broke the morning stillness now and then, a sound that always made Lydia's heart stir, even after all these years. When she'd started the business with her late husband, Martin, the burner's roar had frightened her a little. Now it was like an old song, one she could hum without thinking. She looked out across the valley while they waited for the passengers to arrive. The world below was still wrapped in mist, the trees rising through it like islands. The sun had just crested the far hills, and the light spilled in slow ribbons across the field. There were few places, she thought, where the beginning of a day felt this visible, as though you could see the world waking up one color at a time. She checked her watch. Nearly 6. The passengers would be along soon, 3, maybe 4 of them. Small groups suited her better these days. Less chatter, more space for the sky to do the talking. She looked up at the slow brightening sky, her breath visible in the cool air. Another sunrise, another flight. She'd watched hundreds from this very field, and each one still felt like a small private miracle. Fleeting, gentle, but always enough. Somewhere in the distance, a car turned onto the gravel lane, tires crunching lightly. Lydia tucked her hands into her jacket pockets and smiled, the sound of arrival stirring both memory and anticipation. Another morning, another ascent. The last flight of summer was about to begin. The car door shut softly, followed by the crunch of footsteps on gravel. Lydia turned, brushing her hands on her jacket as the morning mist curled around the figures walking toward her. There were 4 of them, as she'd expected. The first was a woman in her late 60s, short and round-cheeked, wearing a scarf patterned with tiny balloons. She smiled the kind of smile that made her eyes crease. Behind her was a tall man with silver hair, carrying 2 thermoses and a paper bag that smelled unmistakably of cinnamon rolls. The woman called out before she reached the gate. "Are we early?" "Right on time," Lydia said, opening the gate for them. "Morning. You must be the Harpers." The woman nodded. "Annie, and this is Bill. It's our retirement gift to ourselves. One last adventure before we start arguing about who makes the tea." Bill chuckled. "She means before she starts telling me how to make the tea." Lydia smiled. "Sounds like a fine start to retirement." They shared a soft laugh, and Lydia noted the way Annie slipped her hand through her husband's arm. A small, natural movement, worn smooth by years. A few minutes later, another car pulled up. From it stepped a young woman with wind-blown hair and a large sketchbook tucked under her arm. She looked around the field as though she'd been waiting all her life to find this particular patch of earth. "Morning," Lydia said gently. The girl smiled, shy but bright. Hi, I'm Eva. I called last week. The artist residency down by the coast said you sometimes let people sketch during the flight. Lydia nodded. That's right, you'll have the best view in the county. Just hang on to that book when we take off. Eva's cheeks flushed a little. I will. Thank you. The last arrival came not by car, but on foot. A man, early 40s perhaps, with a dark coat and a notebook half tucked into the crook of his arm. He paused at the gate as though uncertain whether to come closer. Morning, Lydia called. He nodded. Morning, sorry. I hope I'm not late. Not at all. You must be Mr. Pembroke? That's right. Call me Tom. He had the quiet air of someone who'd come not for the view, but for the quiet. Lydia had seen that look before, people carrying questions they hadn't yet formed into words. Dan was helping Bill with the ropes now, chatting easily. Annie handed out the cinnamon rolls, insisting everyone take one, and soon the air was filled with a soft, homely scent of sugar and spice. Ava sat on the edge of the basket, turning pages in her sketchbook. Lydia caught glimpses of what she'd drawn, the fields, the shore, a few abstract swirls of color that looked like captured wind. You've done this before? Lydia asked her. Ava shook her head. No, but I've dreamt about it. I just like the idea of being between worlds for a little while. That's a good way to put it, Lydia said softly. Tom had drifted closer, his gaze on the burner setup. You've been flying long? Over 20 years, Lydia said. My husband and I started the company together. He was the one who convinced me the sky could be home. Tom nodded. That's a lovely thought. He smiled, just faintly. I'm writing a travel piece. Well, trying to. I thought maybe this might help me remember what travel feels like. It will, Lydia said simply. When the balloon began to stir, the fabric rustling as warm air flowed inside, conversation quieted. The great envelope swelled gently, gold and crimson coming to life against the pale sky. Annie let out a delighted breath. Oh, it's beautiful. I didn't realize how alive it would look. Lydia smiled. She's always been a bit of a show-off. Soon the basket was upright, the ropes taut. The passengers climbed in, Dan steadying them one by one. Lydia took her place by the burner, checked her instruments, and looked at the horizon. The sun had cleared the mist now. The fields below were turning gold, the river flashing like a silver thread. The air felt kind, cool and sure. All right, she said softly. Hold on to your hats, everyone. The burner flared. Heat rose through the morning. The ground began to fall away in slow, steady grace. The balloon lifted, first a whisper, then a breath, then the sure, gentle floating that always felt like a secret shared with the sky. Lydia looked down to see the field shrinking beneath them. The world softened, colors blending, sounds fading until only the wind remained. She looked at her passengers, 4 strangers now joined by altitude and wonder, and smiled. Welcome, she said quietly, to the morning. For the first few minutes, no one spoke. They didn't need to. The sound of the burner, the hush of the air, and the vastness spreading out beneath them seemed to say everything. the fields unfurled in slow motion, gold and green patchwork stitched with hedgerows and narrow roads. To the west, the river gleamed like a ribbon of light curling through the valley toward the far hills. Beyond that, a scatter of cottages caught the sun on their roofs, smoke curling lazily from a chimney or two. Lydia had flown this route hundreds of times, but the view never stopped surprising her. She loved the way the world looked from up here, not smaller exactly, but gentler. Problems flattened out, edges softened. The balloon moved with the wind, not against it, and that surrender, that quiet trust in the invisible, always made her chest feel a little lighter. Eva was the first to speak. "It's so quiet," she whispered, as if afraid of breaking the spell. Lydia smiled. "The air holds you," she said softly. "All you have to do is listen." Eva nodded, her gaze drifting outward. She was already sketching, one hand gripping the basket, the other letting her pencil dance across the page. The movement was loose, fluid, as if she were trying to draw the feeling of drifting itself. Annie stood beside Bill, both of them holding hands over the basket's edge. "Would you look at that?" Bill murmured. "You can see the church from here, and the river bend where we used to walk the dog." Annie smiled, leaning her head on his shoulder. "You think it's changed much down there?" "Probably not," Bill said. "It's us that's changed." Lydia let them talk, content to listen. She'd learned over the years that people often found their truest words in the sky. Something about the altitude loosened whatever they'd been keeping quiet. Tom stood a little apart, notebook open, eyes on the horizon. The wind lifted his hair slightly as he wrote a few lines, then paused to watch a flock of birds veer across the sky. "What do you write?" Lydia asked after a while, keeping her voice low. "Sometimes travel pieces," he said, still looking out. "Sometimes stories I never finish. I thought I might find an ending up here. Maybe you will." He smiled faintly. "Or maybe I'll just learn to stop looking for one." Lydia understood that feeling all too well. There were stories she'd stopped finishing too. Moments she'd folded neatly away, as if tucking them into drawers she no longer opened. She glanced down at the controls, though she didn't really need to. Everything was steady. The balloon drifted just as she'd planned, rising with each soft pulse of flame, then settling again into that peaceful, suspended quiet. She thought of Martin, of how he used to hum while flying, the tune half lost in the wind. He'd always said that ballooning wasn't about direction, but about trust. "You don't fight the air," he'd told her. "You listen to it. You let it take you where you didn't expect to go." Lydia still heard his voice sometimes when she flew, not sharply, not as an ache, but as something woven into the sound of the wind. Below them, the valley began to open into rolling farmland. Sheep dotted the fields like bits of wool. A farmhouse chimney sent up a curl of smoke, and somewhere faintly a dog barked, a distant, comforting reminder of the life still happening below. Annie took out a small camera. "Do you mind if I—" "Go right ahead," Lydia said. "She likes her picture taken." Annie laughed, the sound warm and delighted. "I don't know how you ever get tired of this." "I don't," Lydia said. "But sometimes it's the landing I look forward to most." Bill chuckled. You're not nervous about it, are you? Not nervous, she said, eyes twinkling. Just respectful. The ground's a partner, not a guarantee. Tom looked over, intrigued. That's quite a way to think of it. Lydia shrugged gently. The sky teaches you that. Everything's a partnership. Wind and lift, trust and gravity, even endings and beginnings. The passengers fell quiet again after that, each caught up in their own thoughts as the balloon drifted higher, the horizon widening until it seemed to curve with the shape of the earth. For a long moment, Lydia let herself breathe it in. The cool, thin air, the faint scent of fuel, the steady pulse of flame, the peace that seemed to hang just out of reach of everything below. She could almost feel the season shifting in that stillness, the faint change in the light, the whisper that summer was beginning to turn. And yet, suspended there above the waking valley, Lydia felt an ache of gratitude that this moment, this quiet drift through the sky, could still hold her so completely. The wind softened as the morning aged, turning warm and faintly sweet. Lydia could tell by the way the balloon shifted, a subtle, easing rhythm that meant they were nearing the edge of their flight. The air grew denser, the fields below bright and still. Nearly time, she murmured, glancing at the altimeter, though she already knew. You'll feel a start to sink. Just let it happen. The passengers nodded, faces lit by sunlight. Even Tom, who'd been quiet most of the journey, looked a little lighter now. Below, a wide meadow opened between the hedgerows, its grass pale gold and moving in waves with the breeze. Lydia judged the wind, gave a small pulse from the burner, and began her slow descent. The balloon drifted lower, brushing the edge of the air like a sigh. The first touch of grass against the basket made everyone laugh softly. That startled sound of returning to earth. Perfect, Bill said. Almost, Lydia replied, smiling as the basket settled with a gentle bump. For a moment, no one moved. The balloon swayed once, then steadied. The world was close again. The scent of grass, the faint buzz of insects, the sound of a lark rising somewhere above the hedges. Dan was already jogging across the field from the support truck, waving as he came. Beautiful spot, boss, he called. Lydia grinned. Couldn't have asked for better. They worked together to deflate the balloon, the passengers helping with quiet laughter and easy hands. The great canopy sank slowly, the colors folding into the grass like a giant, sleepy flower closing for the day. It feels a bit sad, Annie said as she gathered one edge of fabric, like tucking something away you're not quite ready to let go of. Lydia nodded. She'll rest a while, but she'll wake again. They always do. Dan spread a blanket near the basket, and Lydia unpacked the picnic hamper she'd brought, a habit she'd kept from her earliest flights. There was crusty bread, soft cheese, strawberries, and a bottle of elderflower cordial still cool from the morning. They ate together, cross-legged in the grass, the balloon lying quiet beside them. Eva's sketchbook was open between her knees. She'd captured quick glimpses of the flight, the curve of the horizon, the sweep of the fields, Lydia's steady hands on the burner. They're beautiful, Annie said, leaning over. You've caught the light exactly. Eva smiled shyly. I usually paint with watercolors, but up there it felt like drawing was faster, like the pencil could keep up with the air. Tom closed his notebook and set it beside him. "You'll remember this better than any photograph," he said quietly. "And you?" Lydia asked him. "Did you find what you came for?" He looked thoughtful, watching a butterfly drift past. "Maybe not an ending," he said, "but a beginning I didn't expect. Sometimes that's enough." Lydia smiled at that, a slow, knowing smile. "It usually is." Bill poured elderflower into tin cups. "To the sky," he said. "To the sky," the others echoed. They drank, the cordial light and cool, the sweetness mingling with the scent of wildflowers. The moment stretched, easy, golden, unhurried. When the food was gone and the balloon neatly packed, they stood together one last time in the quiet field. The sun was higher now, the air shimmering faintly with heat. "Thank you," Annie said, reaching out to squeeze Lydia's hand. "It was more peaceful than I thought flying could be." "It's the air that does it," Lydia said. "We just go along for the ride." They loaded the basket and rolled the balloon into the truck. When the engine started, Lydia looked out at the field once more. The grass still pressed where they'd sat, the faint scent of elderflower and sunlight lingering. As they drove away, she glanced in the mirror. The field seemed smaller now, yet somehow infinite, as though part of it had come with her. And in a way, it had. By the time they reached the airfield, the light had turned honey gold. The day's warmth still hung in the air, but it carried that faint coolness that hinted at the turn toward autumn. Long shadows stretched from the hangar doors across the grass, and the scent of dry straw mixed with the faint tang of fuel. They parted slowly, hugs and waves, laughter that lingered. The cars disappeared down the narrow lane one by one until it was just Lydia and Dan. Lydia looked up at the sky. "I think this was the one." Dan nodded, not pressing further. He knew her well enough to hear what she wasn't saying. Inside, the hangar felt cavernous and still. The balloon's envelope lay coiled in its crate, the ropes folded neatly, the basket resting on its side like a tired friend. For a long moment, Lydia just stood there. The silence was companionable, not empty, but filled with all the echoes of mornings and landings and quiet laughter. She could almost hear Martin's voice again, teasing her about her overly tidy rope coils, or humming under his breath while packing up after flights. She smiled, shaking her head. "You'd say we finished strong this season," she murmured. "No scrapes, no near misses, just the sky doing what she does best." She began her end-of-season tasks, draining the burner tanks, wiping down the basket's wicker frame, writing a few notes in the logbook. Each motion carried its own small rhythm, the kind that required no effort, only presence. By the time she rolled down the hangar door halfway, the sun had dipped low. The horizon glowed like a slow ember, soft and forgiving. Then she noticed it, an envelope on the workbench near her thermos. She frowned slightly. She hadn't left any paperwork there. The paper was thick, a cream color flecked with gold dust from the field. On the front, in tidy handwriting, "For Lydia." She recognized the handwriting at once, Tom's. Inside was a small notebook bound with twine. No note, just the book itself. She turned the first page and saw his neat script, for the woman who knows how to listen to the wind. The next pages were filled with fragments, lines that felt like beginnings, sketches of moments from the flight. The world folds smaller as you rise. 4 strangers held in air, bound not by rope but by silence. The captain smiles as if she's seen this horizon before in another life, and it said her name. Lydia sat down on the step of the hangar, the book open on her knees. The sky was deepening now, that in-between hour when the light goes soft and everything seems to exhale. She read a few more pages, a scene about Annie and Bill's clasped hands, Eva's loose sketches, the way the fields looked like painted cloth beneath them. It wasn't a finished story, just fragments, but each one carried the stillness of that morning. When she reached the last page, she found only a few words. Some journeys don't end, they change shape. Thank you for the lift. Lydia closed the book gently, feeling something in her chest unclench. She looked out toward the horizon, the same direction they drifted that morning. The last light touched the tops of the trees, turning them to fire. A breeze stirred, lifting the edge of her hair. It carried the scent of grass and faintly the sweetness of elderflower from the picnic. She stood and looked up at the sky, clear, open, endless. For the first time in a long while, she didn't feel the ache of endings, only the quiet steadiness of having shared something worth remembering. She set Tom's notebook on the shelf beside Martin's old logbooks, where it seemed to belong. Then she turned off the light, closed the hangar door, and stepped out into the cooling air. The valley lay hushed before her. Somewhere, a barn owl called. Above, the first star blinked into view. Lydia smiled to herself. Until next summer, she said softly, the same words she always used, but this time they felt lighter. She walked back toward the lane, her shadow long and slender in the twilight. The air smelled of hay and the faint promise of rain. Behind her, the hangar stood quiet, holding the memory of flight. Ahead, the road curved toward home, and the last of the summer light followed her all the way there.